They said I was forgetting things. First, it was the stove. Then it was Clara's recital. Then, a doctor's name I'd known for 20 years. I laughed it off at first, but I saw the glances, heard the whispers. She's slipping. And maybe I was. Or maybe I just needed more sleep, more peace, less being watched like I might vanish. But then something strange happened. Clara was humming in the hallway. Not a song from her cartoons. Not something they taught her in school. It was off-key, soft. But I knew every note, because I used to hum it while folding tiny socks. When her father was 3, when the nights were long, and only he and I existed. I never sang it again after he left for college. I never told her about it. Not once. But that day, she hummed it like she'd heard it 100 times, and I just stood there, shaking. If I was really forgetting, how did she remember what I never said aloud? Maybe I've misplaced a few things, but maybe they misplaced me. I still remember the afternoon it all shifted. Vanessa had come by with Clara, just for a short visit, she said. Nathan was at work. Clara ran ahead, arms wide, and I opened the door before she could knock. I had baked banana bread, the kind Nathan loved when he was little. The smell filled the kitchen. Clara sat on the floor, playing with buttons from my sewing tin. I hummed a lullaby, an old one I used to sing when Nathan was her age. Just gently, under my breath. Clara started humming along, not quite in tune, but close enough to make my heart skip. Vanessa glanced up from her phone. "That song again?" she said, not unkind, but clipped. "Let's not confuse her with old things." I didn't say anything, but something in me folded up, quietly. Later that evening, I found Vanessa's purse left behind on the couch. It had tipped open. A manila envelope was inside. I wouldn't have looked. Truly, I wouldn't have. But Clara had tugged it onto the floor while playing. I gathered the papers to tuck them back in. That's when I saw my name. Request for legal guardianship review. Underlined. My birth date. Clara's. Vanessa's signature. There was a letter, too. Typed, formal, and impersonal. It said I had shown increasing cognitive inconsistencies, that I forgot appointments, that I confused events, and that I had once taken Clara out without parental permission. I froze. I never took Clara anywhere without saying so. And yes, I'd forgotten the vet appointment that week. But that was because Vanessa changed the date last minute and didn't tell me. My breath got shallow. I felt the house turn colder, even though the heater was humming. I placed the papers back. Carefully. Too carefully. The next day, I heard her on the phone. She was in the sunroom. Didn't realize I was outside, watering the petunias just under the window. "I'm not saying she's dangerous," Vanessa said, her voice low but firm. "But I can't trust her to know what's real anymore. And honestly, I wouldn't leave Clara with her again." There was a pause. "I've already spoken to the attorney," she added. I dropped the hose. Water hit the concrete, splashing my slippers. Later, Nathan came home. I thought he'd say something. Anything. But he just kissed Clara on the forehead and nodded at me with that polite smile he used for cashiers and neighbors. He knew, and he had chosen silence. That night, I sat in the quiet of my room. Clara's crayon drawing still hung on my fridge. A crooked sun. A woman with gray hair holding hands with a girl. She'd written Nana in big, uneven letters. I traced the word with my finger. My mind, they said, was slipping. But I remembered that drawing. I remembered that song. I remembered everything. They just never asked. I waited. That's what I remember most about that month. Not the soup gone cold or the lights I left on by mistake, but the waiting. I kept the guest room tidy, like Clara might come sleep over. I fluffed the pillows twice a day. I folded the little yellow blanket she used to drag around and placed it at the foot of her bed like a promise. Once, I called Vanessa, just to ask if Clara could come by to pick apples in the backyard. It was a tradition, her tiny hands barely gripping the fruit, her giggles echoing through the trees. But Vanessa paused. Too long. Then said, Clara had a dentist appointment on a Sunday. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket over my knees. The wind was just sharp enough to sting. Somewhere, a neighbor's wind chime tried to sing. But even it seemed unsure of the melody. Nathan didn't say much. He stayed late at work. Or said he did. When he came home, he'd kiss my cheek like a polite stranger, then disappear into the den. The space between us grew so fast, it startled me, as if I blinked and he was already on the other side of the room, of his life. The hardest part wasn't being left out. It was being unseen, as if the stories, the songs, the kisses on scraped knees had vanished, not forgotten, erased. I once tried humming the lullaby, the same one I used to sing every night until Nathan's eyes gave in to sleep. I'll hold your dreams while you rest your head. But the second line caught in my throat. Nothing came out. Just silence. Clara had once asked me to sing it 3 times in a row. Said it made her tummy feel warm. Her little fingers would drum the rhythm on my arm, as if the beat itself held her safe. I began writing down every moment I could recall. Every word Nathan said as a child. Every question Clara asked. The journal became a secret second heart. Something to prove I had been there, that I had mattered. Because they didn't say it outright, but I felt it. In the way Nathan avoided my eyes, in how Vanessa triple-checked the stove I'd already turned off. They thought I was slipping, losing track, becoming unreliable. But I remembered. I remembered the shape of Clara's laugh, the way Nathan used to say again after every story. I remembered the night Nathan had night terrors and I rocked him for hours, singing that lullaby until his fists unclenched. They might not have seen it, but I hadn't lost anything, not the parts that mattered. I just didn't know how to show them. Not yet. I started to question myself more often. Not just the little forgettings, like where I put my glasses or if I'd fed the dog twice, but the kind of forgetting that seeps into how people look at you. The slow shift from conversation to correction. From asking your opinion to double-checking your answer. Vanessa had begun labeling things in the kitchen. For your convenience, she'd said, smiling. I nodded, though something inside me winced. The sugar jar, the tea bags, even the salt. They each wore their little name tags now, like children on the first day of school. Then one morning, I reached into the cabinet for a small tin, one I always kept tucked in the back. It wasn't labeled, of course. No one used it but me. Inside were my buttons, not the sewing kind. These were memory buttons, little tokens, pieces of fabric, broken beads, a rusted thimble. I'd pick one on days when I felt myself slipping, let it sit in my palm and try to trace the shape of a moment it came from. That day, I chose the blue bead, the one that had once hung from Clara's first baby bracelet. I hadn't shown it to anyone, just kept it. I held it in my palm and whispered the lullaby, not out loud, just in my head. The same melody I used to hum to Nathan when he couldn't sleep. Only once did I ever hum it in front of Clara. She was 2. She'd woken from a bad dream, and Nathan wasn't home. I took her in my arms and sat on the porch swing, humming softly into her hair. Just once. I remember thinking, she won't recall this, but it didn't matter. It calmed her, and it calmed me. Weeks passed. The house quieted in a new way. Vanessa stopped giving me reminders out loud. She simply left sticky notes now. I felt like I was living in a museum of instructions. Open this. Don't touch that. Call before using. Then, one afternoon, Clara came running from the living room, holding a crayon drawing in her hand. "Grandma, look!" she shouted, eyes beaming. I smiled and took the paper. It was a child's world of color. Squiggled blues and silvers and yellows. "That's you," she said, pointing to a figure in a rocking chair. "And that's the moon," she added, "all folded like the blanket you made." The moon was drawn bent, curved like a shawl draped on a hook. I blinked. "Folded like the blanket?" I asked. Clara nodded. "The one that smells like you. You sang to me with it." She started humming. No words, just the melody. That same gentle rise and fall. 3 notes up, 2 down. I felt the bead still in my pocket, warm now, and I felt something loosen in my chest. "That's a nice tune," I said carefully. "Where'd you hear it?" Clara shrugged. "You did it, when I was scared of the owl. You rocked me, and it was dark, and you said the moon would fold me up." My throat tightened. I hadn't told that to anyone, not even Nathan, not even myself, aloud. I turned away for a second to wipe something off my eye that wasn't there. That evening, I made tea and sat in the den, holding that same drawing. Vanessa passed by, slowed down, then doubled back. "Where'd Clara get that song?" I asked quietly. She raised an eyebrow. "What song?" "She hummed something to me, just now. Said I sang it to her years ago." Vanessa froze. "She said that?" I nodded, not pressing. She walked over slowly, picked up the drawing, traced the moon with her finger. Then she said, almost to herself, "Nathan told me. You used to make up songs for him. Lullabies that weren't in any book." I didn't reply, just waited. She sat down across from me. "The other night, Clara had a dream. Woke up crying. I was too tired. I told her to settle herself. She said, 'Grandma's song will come. She remembers it, even if I don't.'" Vanessa looked up at me then, eyes wet, voice low. I didn't believe her. I thought she was just imagining. But I heard her humming it again this morning. The same tune Nathan used to hum in his sleep sometimes. I never knew where it came from. A silence settled between us. The kind of silence that's not empty, but full. Then Vanessa said something I didn't expect. "You remember more than I ever gave you credit for." She stood up, paused at the doorway, then added, "I'm sorry if I made you feel small." I didn't answer, just nodded. The way older women do when they've learned that some things aren't meant to be held too tight, that the remembering isn't for proving, it's for keeping. Later that night, I tucked Clara in. She was already half asleep. As I bent to kiss her cheek, she whispered, "Grandma, I drew the moon again. I made it soft, so it could fold around you too." I sat by her bed long after her breath steadied, watching the shadows shift on the walls, listening, not for words, but for echoes. And somewhere in the quiet, I hummed again. Not to remember, but to return. I didn't confront her. I never said, "You were wrong." That kind of truth, it isn't received with shouting. It's remembered. So, one afternoon, I sat by the window with my old tape recorder, the same one Nathan gave me when Clara was born. I cleaned the dust off, replaced the batteries, and pressed play. It wasn't my voice on the tape, it was Clara's. Weeks ago, while I was visiting, she had been humming by the windowsill, and just before I left, she whispered to herself the same melody I once sang to her father. I had pressed record out of instinct, not even sure why, but now I knew. The lullaby came through the speaker, shaky but clear. And when I closed my eyes, I could see Nathan at 5 years old, wrapped in a blanket, his eyes half closed as I sang that same tune. I copied that recording to a flash drive and slipped it into a small box, along with a note that said, "Some songs don't live in the mind. They live in the skin, and they wait to be remembered." I mailed it to their house. No return address, no name, just a brown envelope with Clara's name on it in soft ink. I didn't hear anything for days. Then, a week later, something arrived for me. A small package, no note. Inside was a brand new tape recorder, the same model, just newer. It smelled faintly of vanilla, the kind Vanessa used in her candles. I smiled. There were no apologies, no confessions. But something had shifted. The silence had changed shape. And one night, as I sat in my garden, the wind carrying the scent of lilac, I played that same lullaby again, just for myself. Not to prove anything, but to remember that even when they say you're forgetting, sometimes you're the only one who truly remembers. Clara stayed for the afternoon that Friday. Vanessa had only said she needed to run errands, but I felt something else in the way she placed Clara's bag gently by the door. Like she wasn't just dropping her off, she was letting her in. Clara was full of color that day. She brought out her crayons and asked if she could draw the dream song. I asked what she meant. She tapped her tiny chin like she was thinking hard. "The one that sounds like rocking chairs and stars," she whispered. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I sat down beside her, and together we drew. I sketched a window. She added stars. Then I hummed the melody, and her little voice picked it up again. Off-key, but perfect. Later that evening, while Clara napped on the couch, I found her toy recorder on the table. Out of curiosity, I pressed play. It was just a soft hum. Me, earlier, and Clara echoing it, just behind. Faint, fragile, beautiful. Then I heard something I hadn't expected. Vanessa's voice. Quiet, humming the same tune. Just for a few seconds, passing through the kitchen, maybe without even knowing she was doing it. I froze. That melody had traveled from my chest to Clara's lips and landed softly in Vanessa's breath. I sat there, holding that little plastic recorder like it was made of glass. For years, I had begged for a space in their lives, fought against fading, and yet here it was. My memory, not in words or photos, but in the one thing no one could fake. A song. A mother's hum. Clara stirred on the couch and reached for my hand without opening her eyes. "Sing the stars again, Nana." So I did, and in that quiet room, filled with the scent of lavender lotion and faint crayon wax, I finally let the silence hold me, not to erase me, but to echo something that had always been mine. Some stories don't ask for a reply, but one day, a soft message came through. "Mama, your story brought mine back to life." She said her daughter hummed the same tune I'd once sung, And in that moment, she remembered a mother's warmth she'd long forgotten. So I write, not to hold on, but to make space for others to remember. If you've ever had a memory no one else believed in, you're not alone, sweetheart. You can leave a little piece of it in the comments. Maybe one lullaby will meet another. The email is gently waiting just below.